Thanks also, Dan. You've raised definitely the bar for me already. I know the doors only open with the access card, so I hope everyone's not just stuck here for my presentation and they're all here voluntarily. So I might just give a minute for that. Everyone's here? Okay, perfect. Right, so I'm going to move from something more real to something more artificial now. I know I'm conscious of time. We've got 20 minutes to look at it. I kind of removed. I know that on the program that you must have got, there was a word called learners for an AI-powered future. How do we prepare? But I took the learners out from there because sometimes we kind of relate learners only to our students, but I want to call myself as a staff a learner as well. So what I'm going to do is just three things. How do we begin the conversation? What are the different use cases, and how do we change the assessment designing? I mean, that the third one is the most sort of the massive questionable kind of discussion, debatable topic. So I want to come to that definitely. So this was the use case that I saw in the UNESCO's 2023 report. By the way, no, I was wanting to use Menti, but I'm not going to do a show of hands. Has everyone used ChatGPT? Everyone in the room? Yeah, perfect. So we're all not novice to it. That's the good, the thing, because we can't ignore it. It's futile to do that sort of discussion that, we don't want ChatGPT, we don't want AI. It's already there in education. And in fact, just a week or so ago, we've got the code interpreter as an extension to GPT-4, which does, as an economist, even my task around data analysis. So there you go. I'm kind of worried about looking at the things that it can do for graphic designing, for data analysis. You give it an Excel, it brings up heat maps and everything. I'm going to show you that as well. So where do we begin that conversation? I'm conscious that in a couple of months, I'm moving into a new academic year with a whole set of students coming in. And everyone's using it. We cannot ignore that. We cannot stop them from using it because I should have introduced myself a bit more properly in the beginning. I sit on a panel for the Chartered Institute of Public Relations. And public relations, or within marketing, within graphic designing, AI is very much prevalent. It's already there. So if we refrain our students from using it, then kind of we're questioning on their employability as well. They will have to use these tools, whatever sort of sector they move into. So it's important to have that sort of discussion. So what am I thinking in terms of helping my students understand around the pros and cons? Or where would I begin that sort of conversation with them? So I kind of like this sort of algorithm that I found in the UNESCO's report. Start building that conversation with the students that when they create an output or when they manufacture a content, is it safe to use it or not? So the first question they could say that, does it matter the output is true or not? So the first point is, does the output really matter? If your answer is no, then go for it. Use ChatGPT, whichever tool you would like to use, because it's just simply safe. But I don't think that's where we are. The algorithm for us moves a bit further than that, because the output does matter to us. Whatever content I'm using, whether in terms of accountability, ethics, privacy, or whatever sort of traceability, whatever concerns you've got, the output does matter. So then it comes to the fact that, do you have an expertise to judge whether that content is correct or not? Where does your experience? We maybe as educators have that experience, but imagine someone who's just joining the university first year, have no concept, around understanding around different concepts or content knowledge. Can they actually judge that, okay, this is the right thing that I've got from an AI generated response? If the answer is yes, are they willing to take that responsibility? I know there have been talks around universities still in that process of coming up with regulations and setting up rules as to how the students could reference around it, or how the students have to claim. The whole talk about academic integrity is there. So what I'm moving towards is, my first caution to my students would be that it's never completely safe to use an AI tool. It's either possibly safe or it's completely unsafe. And let's see a diagram. So this was an image that I generated using Lexica. Well, there are different images that you can pick up from it. You don't really have to generate sometimes. But can you figure out the most important mistake in this? So first of all, I don't know whether he plays basketball or not, but I just thought maybe Elon Musk playing basketball. You can also find him in McDonald's clothes, by the way, on Lexica. So if you want to fancy that picture. Anyone? Okay, there you go. Look at the fingers. So, okay, that's one example. The other one which I wanted to give is, I think this has been a while, but so Tay was a Microsoft generated chatbot, and it obviously was generated with the idea that it's going to be helpful for the users. But in just 24 hours, Tay was moved from being a chatbot to becoming a racist, those asterisks. So it sort of, Trumpist comments, feminist comments, racist comments, and whatnot. I mean, and by the time, it was evening, then Microsoft had to bring it out. And pull that sort of. So what I'm trying to say here is also to the students that whatever content gets generated is not unbiased. It's not without mistakes. You can somehow, not have a perfect thing. And then this is the whole idea around the algorithm as well, that it's never almost unsafe to use that sort of a tool. So if you put in garbage in, then you can get garbage out. Right, so that's the whole point. Now, what sort of replication can we have this around the education sector in specific? So my personal feeling here is that we should have that sort of conversation with students, that do not assume that the content that you will generate through AI will always be correct. And it's not 100% difficult for us as staff or us as teachers or educators, whatever you'd like to call yourself, that we cannot identify those, hints. First of all, at the moment, it could be very sort of American localization kind of cases. You could have references that are completely wrong, especially the news around the law discipline. Then the content could be more generic. The more you play with it, you'll realize the more questions you ask ChatGPT, it kind of gets into a very generic language and repetitive. So the style of language, the definitions, the localizations, the case studies are mostly American, even the difference between a Z and an S. You can figure that out. I hope I won't have that on my slides. But the idea here is begin that sort of communicating expectations with your students. Do not go in with the thought that you want to ban it. That discussion is, for me, futile. Those days are gone. You cannot just have that sort of conversation anymore. Yes, we are respectful towards academic integrity, and we must be mindful for that. But then it's very, very important to have that sort of conversation and begin around that. So what I'm going to first suggest is, glad that everyone's tried it out, but try looking at features around different sort of tools that are available. Now, whenever I look at a tool, my personal way of approaching something is also look at in terms of accessibility. How much, easily accessible is for someone who's a student of special needs. So for instance, now ChatGPT also has an official app, which means I could use a microphone. So it's trying to bring in those accessible features into it. Sorry, Robin, I wasn't meaning to point the pointer at you. But Bard had that feature from the very beginning. So try looking at different distinct features. So suppose you're using ChatGPT in the class and using a browser version, you know that it may not have the microphone feature. So could there be another tool for someone in the classroom who needs that sort of accessibility options? So, but despite all this, the whole point is, which I'm going to move to my second objective on the slides, is whenever you have that sort of conversation, or whenever you're trying to bring these tools within your style of teaching, the relevance should always be pedagogic based. Do not go with the technology driven or a tool driven approach. Always have a pedagogy driven approach. So I'm going to show you now a few use cases that will suggest I'm going to use a tool for that, but the relevance I will tell you is coming from a pedagogy driven sort of approach. So think about it as a sort of a backward design model. So you are deciding on a learning outcome first, then you're looking at the requirement or the tool, and then you're looking at the content. So in a way, each of these use case could be applied to different disciplines because I'm putting the content as a third step, right? So the first use case was, as an economist, we are often questioned by the employers that some of your students don't know how to narrate a specific concept to a non-economic disciplined person, right? How would I mean, for me, it's very difficult to explain to my parents what I do, right? So economics just goes over their heads, and why is the interest rate so high? What's the wrong with inflation and this and that? So how can I explain my concepts to someone from a non-disciplined background? So keeping that sort of objective in mind, I wanted to design a concept-based game card. So I use Bard for this one. Kind of I preferred when I gave the same prompt to ChatGPT. It gave me a much nicer, more, the use case was more helpful. But I tried Bard for this. So my thought process behind the prompt was that I wanted to design a game-based, using game-based pedagogy principles. I want to design a concept game that would generate me a few concept cards and audience cards. So on each table, let's say we divide you into groups. So one group picks up a concept card and then tells a team that you have to behave as a particular set of audience, whether it's someone from the bank, someone who's an employer, or someone from a psychology background or sociology background, whatever. And then you have to explain that concept to them. So it gave me the gameplay. It even gave me the steps for the game and also the tips for the game. Now, be mindful here. The point is, I'm going in with this tool keeping in mind that I already understand game-based principles. I'm not asking it to teach me how to design a game. My point here is to have this as a use case to design a game faster, cheaper, and a more effective way. That's my strategy. My strategy is not to replace my pedagogic principles through AI. My strategy is I want to get something done really quickly. I want to design a game, give me the concept cards and everything that would easily give me or quickly give me the whole set of the rules and everything. The second use case is where I use ChatGPT, and this is the reason why I wanted to show this case is because I also teach a few professional programs. Often the language that I use, academic language, is very different from the industry language. Even the word pedagogy is sometimes alien to them. So I have a specific style of asking a question, but they have a different way of understanding it. So I asked ChatGPT that, this is my assessment question, but I have to give this assessment to a set of property market managers who have no idea as to what even a critical analysis would mean. So my prompt is very descriptive. The reason why I'm showing these use cases is because I want to stress on the fact that I'm not asking ChatGPT or AI tools to tell me to teach. I'm only asking it to help me do things quickly and in the most effective way. So it gave me a simplified version of that question, stress on the fact that what was the difference. I even asked it what was the difference between original and new. So it gave me the fact that you have to clarify academic language. So for instance, what does critical analysis mean? Instead of putting that, if you have to put questions in a more simple way, then ask your users, write the pros and cons or positives and negatives. The third case, so I'm kind of building on my use cases, moving perhaps from the most simplest tools to more technical ones. But the problem here, it's a ChatGPT 4 plugin, which means it requires subscription. Now, when I kind of gave this presentation to my faculty staff, there was a question that came up that, would you recommend students subscribing to it? My answer was no. I would never, it's by choice, it should be by choice. The other reason why I said no was not just because it's a paid version, but over time I do have a feeling that you will have browser extensions to other GPT versions or even to Bard for that matter. I think only yesterday I slept with that news that Bard has come up with some features that even GPT doesn't have, but I haven't explored that. So, okay, so mindful of the time because I really want to come to the assessment part. So another one was a concept mapping. So it gave me a concept map. Again, went in with the whole idea that my students learn through visualization. So I want to create that concept map for them. So it gave me everything, start to end. How could they plan around the dissertation? The third one, the fourth one, which was another plugin, was a puzzle constructor. Now, the point here is that all these use cases could have been done by myself as well, but the tools have helped me save on time. And it's kind of very constructive in that way. I can if I know the game-based principles, or if I know my pedagogy style, I know, or if I'm like sort of active learner, or I know that my students learn through visualization, I would just go with a straightforward prompt, as detailed as possible, and it saves me time, generates me a good content out of it. Right, so something very interesting. Maybe we can do that later on in lunch break. But this one was for staff who are doing PG Cert. So the question, I think, for instance, this one, especially across 6, this is TPAC. So given that clue. This is something I was just telling, which is the latest code interpreter. You give it an Excel, it comes up with an entire heat map, even gives me the interpretation of it. So another, the whole fact that you would be thinking about changing your assessments to more data analysis kind of thing is now gone. You need to have that sort of mindfulness that there are tools that are now escalating, they're now speeding up, developers are moving around them. And even this thought of putting a data analysis or sort of regression can be done by using AI tools. So what do we do? Well, there are the tools. Perhaps I could come back on that with a question. So how am I looking at assignments or assessments, whatever you call them in your institution? So my thought around this is we need to talk, first of all, beyond cheating. Things have to move more towards real people or engagement. I really like the fact that you involve local community. So we have to move beyond that sort of, mindset of exams or cheating or students copying content. So what can be done? So I'm working on this paper currently. So my idea here is think of a two-dimensional space. You have time and effort on the y-axis, and you have impact on the horizontal axis. How you can change your assessments in the least amount of time, but with the least amount of impact? Or do you want to move towards have a bit more time to change your assessments with the massive amount of impact? So with this in mind, I'm trying to look at different approaches and frameworks that could be used to change around the assessments, or that could be used to change the assessments or the formats around it. So for example, very, very easily, originality, very easily adaptable, has impact as well, but minimal impact. Why? Because you can't test originality really. So if I just add that factor of originality in the marking criteria, that students have to come and explain that this is their work, but even that explanation could come from ChatGPT. So that's why for me, that will have the least impact. Pick up something else, identify misuse, will take you the most time and is least effective because you can't really identify it. There's no way. Every time you give a prompt, the output is completely different. My personal favorites are these two here. Classroom activity. I personally think assessments should be beyond the classroom. They should be more real world. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it should be more about learning rather than, and preparing them for a future career or employment rather than just getting a 60 or a 70 on their exam. So have more classroom activities. They will take you time to plan it, but they will have more impact. And then formative assessment is why I put that as a top one in my list, is because that's where I could also use the AI itself. I could have activities designed around prompt generation or designed around how students could equip themselves with the safe use of AI tools within formative assessment. So I could give them a reflective piece generated through AI, and they have to reflect on that. Or I could discuss with them in a classroom setup how they write the prompt, how the prompt could be improved. Because believe it or not, at the end of the day, after their graduation, they are going to end up in a real world where these tools are now in use. Right. I think that's it. But perhaps one last, I know I'm going to take one last second from you. is around images. This is one caution that I personally like to give. We are already hearing about alt image. It's becoming these two words are becoming very popular on social media nowadays. Alternative image means that, or alt text means that you have a text along with image. So as educators or even to your students, this message is really important. Whatever you put should have a metaphorical significance. Don't just have robotic images, robots watching, or 3D dimensional images, or futuristic universities. Imagine a student who is not able to look at the image but is listening to the text. Is there a match between the two? And for us as educators, my most favorite takeaway always is that anything that you do, all the use cases that I showed had a pedagogic relevance. They were not just driven by the tool. I had the learning outcome in mind while using that tool. So I think that's it, because we don't want to end up in this situation, right? We don't want to just add AI onto our talk or onto a project just to get it. Right? That's it. Thank you very much.